Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend this next hour together. As always, I do hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. On tonight's show, we'll be focusing on the coronavirus, which has spiraled out of control. It's the surge within the surge, and it's devastating lives and impacting hospitals. And we're going to talk about that. We'll also discuss politics as all eyes are on Georgia. Before we get to all of that, though, my opening observations for tonight. Today is December 7th, a day that former President of the United States Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1941 stated is a day that will live in infamy. He was referring to the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor when the Imperial Japanese Navy sent fighter planes to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, striking our U.S. naval base, catching everyone by surprise. There were many heroes that day. Among them was a Black man named Doris Miller, better known to many as Dory Miller from Waco, Texas. As a 22-year-old, he was working below deck when the attack started. And when the bombs hit the USS West Virginia, which he was stationed on, he ran to the top of the deck. And not knowing how to operate a machine gun on that deck, he learned to use it anyway and opened fire on those Japanese fighter jets coming in to attack him and all of his fellow Navy service members. He went on to jump off that ship after it was sinking. Before doing that, he saved many lives and pulled many to safety. And he, along with 300 other members, swam to shore. Dory Miller later stated that as he looked on that day, he stated, quote, "With those bullets spattering all around me, it was all by the grace of God that I never got a scratch." And later he stated he attributed his survival to divine providence, stating this, "It must have been on God's strength and my mother's blessing." Well, we find ourselves pitted against another kind of war right now. It's the war on coronavirus, which committed a surprise attack on us and creating a pandemic. And like Dory Miller, we should be looking to our faith and our strength and our ingenuity and assessment that what is real, we can get through this together, just as Dory Miller did that day, working to pull all people to safety that he could. So in that regard, thank you, Dory Miller, for being a strong, dedicated, patriotic Black man who sought to save lives, whether they were Black or white. And we should think that way about the coronavirus and mask up to COVID down. And those are my opening observations. So topping the show today, it would be good to talk to a medical expert in the field of coronavirus. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're joined by Johns Hopkins University's medical doctor, Dr. Panagis Galiatos, and he is a lung specialist working in lung and cardio work. And look, this coronavirus is out of control. Dr. Anthony Fauci called this the surge within the surge. And Dr. Deborah Birx of the White House Coronavirus Task Force has stated that we are facing the worst epidemic ever. Do you agree with those assessments?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's two perspectives that I will throw. One is the numbers, and the other one is, kind of on the grounds and seeing what's going on. So from a numbers perspective, yes. I mean, from that kind of macro level, I do think these numbers look worse. These were they're in alignment with the worst predictions that we had over the summer, and they're coming to fruition. So they, yes, from a public health standpoint, this is the numbers are as bad as they could get. And then from a clinical perspective, more at the micro level, I was in the intensive care units back in the spring with my colleagues. And then, like we saw that surge, we saw a lot of people coming in. It was different. We were caring for a lot of patients and so forth. And probably was the most worked we've ever been. And then, that level began to attenuate over the upcoming weeks, the summer, kind of things a little bit at the back to normal, or at least it felt that way. I just spent the last 2 weeks in the intensive care units again, specifically for managing COVID-19 patients. This is different. I mean, I have never, we were caring for the patients we have. I've never received so many calls on the hour asking for new beds. Can you move someone out and a new sick patient in? Getting a call from hospitals in West Virginia, 4 to 6 hours away because their local hospitals are all full. This is not what we saw back in the spring. I mean, this is, again, the spring we were overworked. We were overworked, under-resourced. This is, amplified. So from a micro level, yes, I can reaffirm, what we see in the numbers at the macro level. Come into one of the local intensive care units. You'll see that playing out in real time.
When you see the cases coming in, Doc, what's it like? I mean, first of all, thank you for being there on the front lines. I know how tiring and exhausting it is for you and other doctors, as well as medical workers. And as I've stated before with you, even staff who have to go in and clean up those hospital rooms and keep the hospital clean and wiped down to prevent the spread of coronavirus. But when you're seeing the patients, how intense is it when they've come to that level that they have to see you in an emergency room situation and possibly even stay?
Yeah, no. So it's a great point. My colleagues and I all, COVID-19 is a disease, just like every other disease. So it's going to have a spectrum. And the bias I have is the patients I care for in the intensive care unit are the sickest of the sick. One of the things that strikes me a little bit different from the spring is more of a diversity in age that I've seen. So we still have our older patients and so forth, and we have our young patients. I cared for a mom of a recent, she recently had a child, and it was just, she's spent several weeks away from that newborn because she's been battling COVID. And so these patients are sick, and to add more challenges, the public health concern that we have of not spreading COVID-19 has resulted in families also not coming in. And we can say why, confidently from a science and public health perspective, but that keeps the families from seeing how ill their loved ones are, and trying to relay that over a Zoom call or a telephone call. I mean, there are no words to kind of really adequately describe how ill a patient is. We use words like, their lungs are failing, their heart is failing, but I just don't think, how we convey that and the grasp from a loved one. And the reason why I see this is my work as a critical care doctor over the last decade. Even though most of my patients don't speak because they have breathing tubes in them or they're in medical comas, the families are by the bedside, and I hold the family's hands. We talk. They see how ill their loved one is. They immediately say, "This is not how they would like to live. Let nature, let God take over." They don't have that ability, and so these patients are struggling. When I came on, we have some patients who've been with us for 30 days, and there's still no end in sight. So that's what we're seeing, and these patients are sick. Again, the spring we still saw them as sick, but the unique variable at this moment is I'm surprised how many younger patients I've been getting.
Talking to Dr. Panagis Galiatos of Johns Hopkins University Medical Center, quite an outstanding hospital that has predicted the number of deaths of coronavirus could climb by March to more than 471,000 deaths. We're going to talk to him right after the break to find out how we can flatten that curve and bend it to our advantage in this country. That's next. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to Dr. Panagis Galiatos. He is a lung specialist at the Johns Hopkins University Medical Center, and he's been doing a lot of great work on the front lines of COVID-19, as well as the university itself. In the previous segment, you were talking about the patients that you're treating, some of them being under your care for 30 days dealing with this COVID-19. And Johns Hopkins University has put out research indicating that the numbers could spiral out of control in terms of the death rates from coronavirus to something like 471,000 by March. We are still in the throes of the holiday season, the Christmas season. It would appear that many people defied the wise counsel of scientists and doctors stating, don't travel during the Thanksgiving holiday, yet they did. Now we're seeing a curve go up again. What's your message to all of us, black, white, brown, yellow, whatever, in terms of safeguarding ourselves and our families from the spread of this coronavirus?
Yeah, no, my messaging to everyone at the moment would be, we can beat this. We 100% can. Human beings, right? As you said, regardless of race, creed, ethnicity, gender, we are amazing, right? We have created some of the most advancements in technology to entertainment, right? The best of humanity can be shown at a time like this. And I say this because we should be reminded that we had two other coronavirus global issues in the past 20 years, right? SARS-CoV in 2003 and MERS-CoV in 2013. Both of those global concerns didn't resolve with a vaccine or a cure. Both of them resolved with the hygienic interventions that we've been advocating for, right? Hand hygiene, physical distancing, and face masks. We know how this virus can spread. We know how it can spread. And with that knowledge, that means we know how we can stop it from spreading. And so what I would plead with every American, right, with every human being is, let's get together, let's promote health and prevent disease by following these requests: physical distancing, hand hygiene. Hopefully people were washing their hands before the pandemic, but let's reinforce it a bit more, and face masks. So I would plead to every American, follow these hygienic interventions. The reason why I want to make that emphasis is we do have an end in sight. We do have a vaccine that will help us in this battle to beat this pandemic. But as one of my colleagues said, it's hard to vaccinate you if you've passed away. So continue following these measures and keeping everyone safe. And I do think we will persevere. I do, but the one standpoint, and this is why I really appreciate being on your show, being able to broadcast this out to your followers, to your listeners, to your viewers. My plea is, let's unify and come together. We can beat this. We really can. We really can. Human beings, we are, we can do good and come together for a greater good.
Yeah, we really do have to come together, Doc. And Dr. G is affectionately known by a lot of your staff. Look, you mentioned the vaccine, and the vaccine could be, the approval of that could be just days away, but it will take some time to get to the masses in this country. And so between now and then, and furthermore, you're right there operating in the inner city of Baltimore, where Johns Hopkins University is headquartered, of course. You've got a large Black population, a Latino population. We see that there's a disparity there racially. Are you concerned at all that the vaccine would not get to those populations that have been marginalized and often forgotten? Do you think the vaccine will get to them fast enough and quick enough to save lives?
You're spot on. I mean, the promise of medicine isn't uniformly felt by every population, and it is everyone's job to reaffirm medicine as a public trust now more than ever. The disproportionate impact of this pandemic on certain populations is an ethical reckoning that we all need to realize. We need to do something to resolve it, right? Not just end this pandemic, but let's end healthcare disparities. I myself am son of immigrants, right? I didn't even speak English until the age of 5 growing up here in Baltimore. So I felt that, it's my own narrative of recognizing healthcare disparities within our own population. So do I fear it? Of course. However, I'm reassured that there's many great champions for humanity in regards to mitigating healthcare disparities. And those are the colleagues I'm working with to assure that they get the vaccine. First, get the information on the vaccine, right? I always want to say that, we got to talk to the community, listen to their concerns, listen to their past of the mistrusts that were plagued upon them, and then hopefully we build the confidence that this scientific technology that we can get to them is safe. So the first thing that I would say is before even vaccinating them, reaffirm and build their confidence that it is a safe vaccine, because that's one of the concerns they always have. Are we being used as guinea pigs at this time? From my standpoint, right now, what we are doing as well, myself, my colleagues, when I'm not in the intensive care units, we're speaking to the community every day, reminding them, here's the information about the vaccine, getting that information out to them. And that way, when they do get access to the vaccine, which we're working with great individuals to assure that, they have the confidence to do it. So I think you ask a great question, but I would just add, it's not just access to the vaccine, it's access to the information to build them the confidence to get it. Because we need them as champions too, right? If we're gonna impact these marginalized populations, we need these community leaders who have built a great platform of helping their community. We need them now more than ever.
And we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to the program. So joining me now is DeKalb County Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson. She is a commissioner there in DeKalb County, Georgia, and all eyes are on Georgia with regard to the runoff that's going to take place, the runoff election on January 5th. Today is the last day for voters to get registered to vote in that all-important senatorial runoff. But last night, Commissioner, there were two debates. One senator chose not to show up, and that was Senator David Perdue, the senior senator of the state of Georgia. He didn't show up in time for the debate with John Ossoff. Strange that didn't happen. Why do you think that is? Why would the senior senator of the state not show up to answer questions from the people?
Well, I can say as an elected official, I can remember my days on the campaign trail, and they can be very demanding. Oftentimes, when you are the incumbent, you will face questions, and depending on your track record and what you've accomplished, it can be a very difficult thing. But what disturbs me most about his failure to attend is at the end of the day, I represent the people, and to the people is whom I owe my accountability. Senator Perdue said early on that he would not be participating. And I had hoped that he would change his mind, because there are a lot of questions that the American people, as well as the people of DeKalb and Greater Georgia, have. And it would have been great to see him have that opportunity to clear up things that may be ambiguous, and to be very clear on his platform, especially in a time like now, when we have the stimulus package on the table and so many questions that require definitive answers in order for the general public to make a wise decision.
Now, with regard to the debate that did take place between Senator Kelly Loeffler and Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's the pastor of Ebenezer Church, the one that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was once the pastor of. Looking at that debate, what struck you about it, and what's your take on it?
And I'm going to, I think you know me to be very forthright, because, as it relates, of course, I am a Democrat, but I do tend to be neoliberal. I'm not as liberal as some, because there are some issues on which I will not budge. I think it's important for people to move beyond party lines and look truly at the issues and the candidates. Watching the debate was interesting because, of course, I do know both candidates. I'm far more familiar with Pastor Raphael Warnock from Ebenezer. But the one thing that struck me most about Senator Loeffler is that it was honestly like watching a mannequin. It appeared to be very rote, memory and scripted. Mm-hmm. You received the same answer again and again, but repurposed. And that was for me a problem. because every question doesn't require the same answer. And at some point, it moves beyond an argument, so to speak, or an issue with your opponent. What we need to hear from you is, what are your plans beyond your plans? Not only Senator Loeffler, but also Senator Perdue. A large part of the campaign has focused around the fact that after being given a briefing on COVID-19 and the crisis, the pandemic that was literally, I guess the word would be imminent, they immediately began to dump stocks. For me as an elected official, that is an issue. That is, in my opinion, a violation of ethics. And most importantly, that's a time when you should be concerned with your people.
So it comes down to fear mongering, does it not?
It does. And that is very dangerous because, again and again, I've heard the conservative say that, of course, we are going to shut down America. Many unfounded allegations that are plain and simply not true.
And we'll be right back after the break. But I just want to go to one point about last night's debate, and that was the attack that Senator Loeffler had against Reverend Raphael Warnock about police reform.
Yes.
And I thought his answer was very illuminating, truth illuminating, in that he is not against the police, has actively worked with the police as well as the state's attorney general, and brought police and the community together, and plans to continue that, but not overlooking the shortcomings of police officers in terms of how they deal, sometimes wrongly, with African-American communities.
My opponent is going to work really hard, spending millions of dollars of her own money, trying to push a narrative about me, because she's clearly decided that she does not have a case to be made for why she should stay in that seat. I have worked my whole life to pull people together. I've been working on criminal justice reform.
And I must say, I was extremely proud of candidate Warnock's presentation last night. And when I say presentation, how well I feel he was able to connect with people. I know, like myself, he's a very, shall I say, new person to the political arena. And being able to deliver a message under intense pressure is truly a beautiful thing. And he did that very well. Again, when we talk about defunding police and creating the image that America will not be safe if this particular individual is elected, it goes back to that conversation we had earlier about shifting away from reality and creating the illusion that we cannot trust America with these people, that, we will create some form of chaotic state if they're elected because they are radical.
You stated earlier about chaotic, and it seems to me that when President Trump came into Georgia, he tried to create more chaos in demanding that the state overturn the election results from the presidential election because it did not go his way. And the chaos ensuing with him raising the specter that the votes were illegitimate. Talk to me about that.
This has been actually quite sad to see play out, because at the end of the day, we live in a democracy. As an elected official, you must accept outcomes. We have undergone 2 separate recounts at this point. We have both a Republican governor, Governor Kemp, as well as a Republican Secretary of State who is directly responsible for overseeing the election process. both have been very forthright at this point in saying, these are the numbers. The numbers were not favorable to you, but the people have spoken. And in a democracy, the will of the many is what should prevail.
Talking to DeKalb County Commissioner Lorraine Cochran Johnson. When we return, we'll talk to her about her efforts to make people aware that they've got to do a lot more to protect themselves against coronavirus. That's next. Welcome back to the program. I'm talking to DeKalb County Commissioner in Georgia there, Lorraine Cochran Johnson, and we've been talking about things politically disconcerting with the president going there, but also talking about the senatorial runoff that's going to take place on January 5th. Another concern that you have, and rightly so, is the number of coronavirus cases that have hit your state, as well as every state in America, very hard. And we're going into a season where it's predictably going to get worse before it gets better. What are you launching today to help people in your county understand how serious this is?
Right now, Kelly, I think, COVID as well as the Senate race are probably at the top of most calendars for elected officials. Here in DeKalb, we're no different than what you see across the US. I think that, people have almost become desensitized to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And what we're seeing now is the numbers just literally rising at massive levels. We have surpassed currently where we were at our most critical state. And what's really frightening about that is we are in the beginning of December. We've not even entered flu season. So we have many hospitals that are at maximum capacity. We're seeing on average about 3,000 deaths per day. So for me, seeing the behavior and the fact that it appears that people have almost said, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. They're working on a vaccine. Life goes on, and it can't, not as it has. So here in DeKalb, we're very thankful. Most municipalities across the US received CARES funding to be used for COVID-related relief. So I utilized the funds that were allocated to me in part to launch a Join Me campaign. And with this campaign, of course, we developed a website, and I love the global map because it really brings into perspective. You can click anywhere. It gives you the population, it gives you the amount of known cases, the deaths, the antigen positive cases that are there, as well as how many people are hospitalized, how many people have recovered, and then the potential cases. So that campaign, it includes everything from, I have 23 billboards, both static as well as digital. And on the digital billboards, we are featuring the numbers each day, and they're going to flash so that while folks are sitting there in traffic or driving by, you're seeing the number of deaths, you're seeing the rise and the spike in cases, because we've got to do something to bring it back home that we're at a critical state. Yeah. And there is tremendous fear for the first of the year and what it's going to bring.
You've always been concerned about the state of Georgia, in particular, of course, your county. I appreciate the work that you're doing there, and glad you could bring it to light, and that launches today. So we'll continue to follow the developments of that. And more importantly, we hope that people will take heed to your efforts and the efforts of others who are trying to protect their lives against COVID. And like you mentioned, the flu season hasn't even hit us yet. So right. We are in dire need of doing something right and getting it right to mitigate this virus. Thank you so much. So we've talked about a lot in tonight's program about the coronavirus and the impact that it's having on all Americans, with the number of cases spiraling out of control, hospitals being inundated and deluged with treatment. And then, of course, there's the politics of all of this. And of course, the political season that we're still in with regards to the presidential election, as well as what's happening in Georgia. Well, how is the Black press weighing in on this? Well, without further ado, let's bring in Dr. Benjamin Chavis. He's the president of the National Newspapers Publishers Association, as well as the Black Press USA, and also the host of the Chavis Chronicles, which appears on PBS. It's a weekly half-hour show. Doc, good of you to join us today. And Ben, there's a lot going on in our country right now that we need to be about the business of taking care of each other like never before. What say you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kelly, and salute to you on the Kelly Wright Show. Your show is really needed because you give that broad overview of all of the issues that impinge upon the quality of life of Black America and other people of color and all Americans. So thank you for continuing to
Thank you.
broadcast. But just let me say that the pandemic on one hand, our nation is still politically divided. As we witnessed last night at the debate in Georgia. But also, I think across the country, we should brace ourselves. We're not getting ready to go into the storm, we are in the storm. The pandemic is devastating. The hospitalizations, hospitals are full, ICU beds are running out. And when it comes to Black America, in particular, all these pre-existing conditions in our communities. I hardly know a family now that has not been touched by the coronavirus. That's across the country, whether you're in the north, the south, the west. It's been all over the country. Excuse that phone.
No problem.
But the thing is, because people just calling in from all over the country,
Yeah.
and everybody's, I would say, fearful on the one hand of the pandemic, but also cautious. But I also think that this is a time for us, your opening point, for us to care for one another. We have to care for everybody in our families. We have to care for everybody in our communities. If you know someone who's vulnerable, who has a pre-existing condition, but also we should point out now that a lot of young people are also being infected by the coronavirus. There's a myth out there that if you're under 30, you don't have to worry. That's not true. There have been fatalities as young as 5 years old. There have been fatalities at 8 years old, 10 years old. There have been fatalities of people, I'm talking about African Americans who have died from the coronavirus in their 20s, in their 30s. So we need to dispel the myth that this is a devastating pandemic only for senior citizens. No, that is not true. It is intergenerational. It is airborne. You got to keep that mask on. And sometimes now people are wearing the mask even in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
If there's more than one person or 2 or 3 people in the home. Because when you go outside of your house for any reason and come back into your house, you have not only have to wash your hands, keep that mask on, but you have to also change your mask. One of the things I'm finding out that if you wear the same mask every day, now unless it's a washable mask, if you wash it every day, but if you have one of the throwaway masks, you have to throw it away on a daily basis. That's how deadly, that's how toxic, that's how poisonous the coronavirus is.
The NNPA, Black Press USA, has a coronavirus task force. You initiated it earlier in the year when coronavirus became, when we became aware of the fact that it was a pandemic and hitting the United States. The doctors on that particular team of your coronavirus task force, they're putting out that information on how frequently to let Black Americans know.
Every day you can go to blackpressusa.com and get an update on a daily basis. So the important thing is, I'm glad you mentioned this, is that now that the vaccines are being prepared, as you know, we could do a whole program, Kelly, about the fear of taking the vaccinations in Black America. We have to overcome that fear. If everybody else takes the vaccine and Black people do not take the vaccine, guess who's going to continue to die from the coronavirus? So we have to overcome these fears. I'm confident. I intend to take the vaccine. I know Vice President-elect Kamala Harris has announced she's going to take the vaccine. President-elect Joe Biden has said former President Barack Obama is going to take the vaccine. And I was getting ready to say that President-elect Joe Biden is also going to take the vaccine. So, and I think we have to have some public education that the vaccine is safe, that it's tested. And I think we have to, again, have a lot of public education. That's why the Black News Channel is so vital. The Kelly Wright show is so vital right now, because people need not only the truth, but they need the truth from a trusted source. And that's where the Black press comes in. That's where the Kelly Wright show comes in. That's where the Black News Channel comes in.
We're coming back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. Dr. Benjamin Shave is still with me now. He is the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publisher Association, as well as the Black Press USA, and the host of Chavis Chronicles. The New York Times pointed out today in an article that the Democrat Party is not resonating with the working class of America, which would include African Americans and even white Americans, and talked about how so many people within the working class resonated with the outgoing president, Donald Trump. What is it about the Democratic Party and not reaching the working class?
Well, I think it's all about messaging. It's also about imaging. I think that the Democratic Party, and I think that President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, as now leaders of the Democratic Party, they're going to have to work on the messaging to make sure that particularly brothers and sisters in the working class, people who work, people who are trying to get out of poverty, people trying to get out of some of the gentrification that's going on in major urban areas, and then also the rural disparities. I think across the board, there's been some disillusionment, but I want to put a positive spin on what the New York Times article that you referenced. I think it serves as a challenge. I think while everybody says we have the largest voter turnout in American history in November, which is true, but that also shows you how far we were behind in getting all Americans to participate in the democracy. I think our democracy, Kelly, is strongest when everybody participates. But when everybody kind of stands on the sideline and waits to see what happens, but not participate in the democracy, then we become vulnerable to half truths, no truths, to stereotypes, and that's why white supremacy had almost a resurrection over the last 4 years.
Final question: what's your message to President Donald Trump, who went into Georgia, actually had the audacity to ask the governor, Brian Kemp, to overturn the election results in order to benefit in some way with an election that did not go his way? And yet there are so many people there in support of him. Now, the governor stood his ground and said that's not federally possible, constitutionally possible, and certainly not possible in this state. Nevertheless, Donald Trump continues to do a lot of muckraking with voters.
Yeah, I've been in prayer. I've been in prayer for President Trump. I've been in prayer for President-elect Joe Biden. But my prayer is that for the good of the nation and for the good of the future of the world, there should be an orderly transition of power. I think that President Trump, if you're listening, you don't want to further taint your legacy. To gracefully concede that you lost the election is better than continuing to deny reality. Because when you deny reality, you not only prevent the full benefit of God's grace reaching you, but you kind of turn your back on the truth. And I think we all should face the truth, both the Democrats, the Republicans, as well as independents. And I think that as we go into this Christmas season, we go into this season of acknowledging the oneness of God. And this is for all of humanity, no matter if you are a Christian, if you are of the Jewish faith, or if you're of the Islamic faith. This is a season where there should be peace on earth. But we know without justice, there will be no peace. And I think right now, America is torn because we don't have political peace. And the reason why we don't have political peace is we do not have the justice that peace requires, the equal justice, the fairness. So my prayer is that President Trump will come to himself, will come to acknowledge, yes, you've been the president for the last 4 years. And now as we transition to a new administration, you should at the very least acknowledge, you should at the very least concede, you should be at the very least open the door to the White House and welcome in the new president-elect.
My friend, I join you in that prayer. That's a prayer that I think we all can actually bow down and get on our knees and pray for. Peace to this nation and the peaceful transition of power, and that all of us come to our senses and realize that united we stand, divided we fall. Dr.
Absolutely.
Benjamin Chavis, President and CEO of NNPA, Black Press USA. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. God bless.
We're coming back with more after this. God bless you too. And welcome back. I'd like to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's show, and I especially want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to watch. I appreciate you. As always, hopefully we've been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Good night, everyone.
All aboard. Come on, come on, all aboard.
Let me break it down for you like this.
The rhythm of love is easy to find if you're listening. The color of light isn't red, black, or white, but it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's alright. Just give it time, give it time. Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price.